Sophia Marshall sat quietly in her modern apartment overlooking the bustling streets of Seattle. At 39, she was the strategic finance director at Titan Solutions, a tech company where she had poured nearly a decade of her career. Known for her sharp intellect and calm determination, Sophia had always let her work speak for itself. She was fiercely independent, intentionally keeping her family's legacy out of her professional life. Her father was a prominent CEO in a Fortune 500 company. But Sophia had worked hard to build her own reputation, refusing to rely on inherited privilege. That morning, as she logged into Titan's HR portal, Sophia's heart sank. Her monthly paycheck had been slashed by $1,800, without any prior notice or explanation. Confused and alarmed, she continued working, trying to push the thought aside. But during a Zoom call with her manager, Gregory Lang, everything became painfully clear. With a forced smile, Gregory announced, "We're streamlining operations to align with the new board's expectations." The words felt like a cold blade slicing through her confidence. Sophia realized she was being sacrificed, quietly removed from the picture. Without fanfare or confrontation, the city lights outside her window seemed dimmer that day. At Titan Solutions, image was everything. Executives preached transparency and collaboration. But beneath the polished veneer lurked silent battles and hidden agendas. Sophia knew this world well. She had spent years navigating it, mastering the art of quiet resilience. She didn't need to shout or cause scenes to make an impact. Her strength lay in her meticulous work, her strategic mind, and her ability to wait patiently for the right moment. Sophia wasn't just another employee, she was a force to be reckoned with. And as the Zoom call ended, she made a silent vow. This wasn't the end of her story. It was only the beginning of a battle she was determined to win, on her own terms. With precision and quiet power. The days following the salary cut felt like stepping into a shadowed room with no windows. Sophia Marshall sat at her desk in the sprawling office of Titan Solutions. The hum of computers and soft tapping of keyboards around her a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside. The $1,800 reduction wasn't just a number, it was a statement. It said she was expendable, invisible, replaceable. Her manager, Gregory Lang, had once been a champion of her work. He regularly sought her insights during strategic planning meetings, praising her accuracy and foresight. But since the announcement of a new board and a shakeup in leadership, everything had changed. Gregory became a different man, someone obsessed with optics and superficial measures. Executive alignment, justification memos, and cost efficiency became the buzzwords he spewed like a broken record. But Sophia knew it was all a charade. It was the afternoon of the third day post-cut when Sophia's patience cracked for the first time. She was sitting alone in the 17th floor stairwell, phone in hand, scrolling through her credit card bills. Her mind raced as she calculated what expenses she could trim: car lease, therapy sessions, groceries, and worst of all, her mother's medical bills. Her mother's diabetes medication was a lifeline Sophia couldn't touch. But with the salary slashed and no word from the pressure mounted. She remembered the silver pen in her desk drawer, sleek, engraved with her initials, a gift from her father on her first day at Titan. "Write your own story," he had said. "Don't let anyone else hold the pen." It felt like a distant memory now. But that day, it grounded her. She tucked the pen into her blazer pocket, a small talisman of control in a world that seemed intent on erasing her. Emails to HR yielded silence. Phone calls went straight to voicemail. By the fourth day, she realized she was being ignored, deliberately sidelined. At lunch, passing by a glass-walled conference room, she saw Gregory with two junior analysts. One had been on her team until recent restructuring. They were reviewing her cost optimization models, the very forecasts she'd painstakingly built and refined over the last 2 years. Gregory gave her only a curt nod. No invitation, no acknowledgement. She forced a polite smile and kept walking, her chest tightening, not from the snub, but the quiet isolation that had become her new reality. That afternoon, an unsettling new reality unfolded. The weekly strategy meeting she had led for over a year was reassigned to Jenna, a recent hire who once asked her basic questions about working capital. Her name was nowhere on the invite list. Her desk was moved the following day to a corner near the printer room, far from windows or any semblance of privacy. The corner office she once dreamed of was now someone else's quiet sanctuary. Each change felt calculated, each slight a message. She wasn't just being demoted, she was being erased. Back home, the weight pressed down even harder. Her mother sat asleep on the couch, glucose monitor blinking red on the counter. Sophia wrapped a blanket around her legs, holding back tears she rarely let herself shed. She was exhausted, the kind of tired that seeps into your bones and refuses to leave. It wasn't just the pay cut, it was the slow, relentless stripping away of her identity and dignity. But she didn't call her father. Not yet. She knew his reaction would be fierce. He'd want to storm Titan's offices, fire Gregory on the spot. But Sophia didn't want his help, not like that. This was her battle, and she wanted to win it on her own terms. Her father's shadow had always been something she tried to step out from. To accept help now would feel like giving up the story she wanted to tell, her story. Not his. Instead, she stopped replying to Gregory's emails. She stopped engaging in the performative meetings that no longer included her voice. But she didn't stop watching. In those quiet moments, Sophia began to listen, to the whispers in the hallways, to the sudden shifts in calendars and responsibilities, to the odd promotions that didn't add up on paper. She started piecing together the puzzle. Gregory's cost-cutting wasn't about efficiency. It was smoke and mirrors. One Thursday evening, after most had left, Sophia stayed late to finish an asset allocation report no one had requested. Quiet work, the kind that went unnoticed unless it disappeared. As she packed up, she overheard voices from Gregory's office. The door was ajar, the hallway dim. Her name was the first word she heard. "She's not a risk," Gregory was saying, his voice smooth but cold. "Quiet, easy to manage. We can phase her out without noise. HR's on board, no severance risk, no legal liability. Numbers still look solid on paper. She's still producing, so it looks efficient to the new board." A second voice, softer but unmistakably from our, laughed quietly. "Cold but smart, cold but smart." Sophia's breath caught. The room felt colder, darker. This wasn't just corporate restructuring. It was a calculated move to remove her quietly, to make sure she didn't fight back. But something inside her shifted that night. The pain dulled and transformed into something sharper, clarity and resolve. This was no longer about anger or revenge. It was about strategy. She spent the night combing through data, budget justifications, expense reports, promotion histories, emails, memos. She remembered how Gregory had slashed her team's travel budget but approved a lavish conference trip for Jenna. How he reclassified her role as non-essential, while elevating one of his close allies to a VP title with little oversight. The justification memos he demanded from staff? He never submitted any himself. By dawn, she had created a 22-slide internal audit report, meticulous, unemotional, damning, but she didn't send it right away. Power, she realized, was in timing. The goal was to let Gregory feel safe, invincible even, until he made a fatal mistake. Friday morning came. Gregory passed her desk with a fake smile, commenting, "Working hard, I see." Sophia smiled back, calm as glass. Always. Behind the scenes, whispers about her restructuring spread. Some colleagues avoided her, others gave awkward encouragement, a few parroting Gregory's lines like loyal soldiers. None of it fazed her. She was no longer surviving. She was preparing. She began flagging inconsistencies in executive summaries Gregory submitted to the board. She highlighted suspicious expense patterns and false efficiencies. She saw through the smoke and mirrors. And with every piece of evidence, her confidence grew. Finally, she drafted an email, not to Gregory, but directly to the executive leadership team. She attached a preview. 3 slides from her report. Precise and undeniable. The subject line was simple. Preliminary findings on internal budget concerns. She signed it, Sophia Marshall, Strategic Finance Director, Titan Solutions. Her silver pen rested on the desk beside her as she hovered her finger over the send button. Recalling her father's words, "Don't ask for your place. Prove it so they can't deny it." Then she clicked send. The countdown began. Monday morning, 9:12 a.m. An unexpected meeting invite appeared. Preliminary review, internal budget concerns. No agenda, just her name and the time. Sophia accepted immediately. Gregory, as usual, said nothing. At 10:03 a.m., he strolled past her desk, smiling his practiced smile, commenting casually about upcoming projections. For a moment, Sophia almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The meeting took place on the 34th floor, where glass walls turned dark and voices grew colder. Two executives, strangers until now, waited with printed slides and legal pads. "Walk us through this," one said. Sophia took a deep breath and began. "No theatrics, no bitterness, just facts, promotions approved with no merit, travel budgets disguised as vendor expenses, department reshuffles designed to silence top performers. The cost of it all? Nearly $1.2 million in disguised inefficiencies over 3 quarters. The room was silent. Gregory tried to interrupt. Her father raised a hand. Let her speak. When she finished, she handed over the full audit report, sealed and signed. Neither executive flinched at her name, but one paused, pen hovering, and asked, "Marshall, any relation to the CEO?" Sophia met his gaze calmly. "Not relevant to this conversation." The meeting ended with a quiet, firm handshake. Back at her desk, she sat, hands folded. Gregory passed again, still unaware. That afternoon, an executive replied, "Next steps under review. Please remain discreet." Sophia smiled. Discreet was her strength. By day's end, a second meeting invite arrived. Full committee review. Wednesday 10 a.m. Legal CC'd. Gregory not invited. The edges of his illusion frayed. Wednesday morning arrived gray and still, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Sophia Marshall woke early, dressed carefully in a navy blue suit, clean lines. No flashy jewelry, hair pulled back neatly. She didn't want to look powerful. She wanted to look prepared. The kind of calm, steady presence that can't be shaken. She arrived at Titan Solutions headquarters a full 15 minutes before the scheduled 10 a.m. meeting. The glass tower loomed above, its reflective surface swallowing the morning light. She took the elevator to the 34th floor, where the executive boardroom awaited. A long table flanked by floor-to-ceiling glass walls. Bottled waters lined in perfect symmetry. Everything about the room was designed to intimidate, to make anyone who entered feel small. Gregory Lang was already there. His usual smile was more cautious, less assured. He looked up as she entered, eyes flicking quickly before settling into a guarded expression. "Didn't realize you'd be attending this one," he said, the forced politeness thinly veiling his surprise. Sophia said nothing. She took her seat opposite him, calm, collected, unyielding. As the rest of the committee filed in, the atmosphere grew heavier. Legal compliance officers, 2 vice presidents, and an empty chair at the head of the table spoke volumes. Someone important was expected. The door opened quietly, and without fanfare, her father stepped in, CEO of a global corporation. But in that moment, just a father sitting silently beside her. No introductions, no dramatic proclamations, just presence. The room fell into a tense silence. Gregory's posture stiffened instantly. He glanced at Sophia, then her father, uncertainty flashing in his eyes. The head of compliance took charge. She clicked through the slides Sophia had prepared, clean, damning, detailed, line by line. She walked the committee through the data, false promotions, budget reallocations disguised as savings, inflated job titles with no reporting lines, and expense accounts abused. Gregory tried to interrupt. Her father raised a steady hand. "Let her speak." Sophia's voice was calm but firm, like a scalpel cutting through the fog of deception. She didn't accuse or shout. She presented facts, evidence, numbers that could not be ignored. Near the end, she laid out the bottom line. Over $1.2 million lost to mismanagement and manipulation in just 3 quarters. The room absorbed the weight of her words. Silence stretched long and uncomfortable. Gregory laughed nervously, attempting to downplay the severity. "This feels more like a vendetta than an audit," he said. Sophia looked directly at him for the first time. Her eyes locked with his, steady and unyielding. "I gave you the benefit of the doubt," she said quietly. "I thought maybe I was just collateral damage in a larger strategy. But then I heard you say I was easy to eliminate, that I had no one to fight for me." Gregory's face froze. "I didn't report you for revenge," she continued. "I reported you because you were bleeding this company from the inside out. And you thought no one was watching." Gregory turned to her father, voice cracking. "This is personal." Her father's gaze was icy. "I wasn't aware she submitted the report. If I had been, I would have expected worse." The head of compliance resumed. "We have verified the records. Internal counsel reviewed the documentation. The findings are accurate and deeply concerning." Gregory's face drained of color. He stood unsteadily, fumbling for words. "I think I need to consult with my legal team." "You're free to do that," her father said evenly, "but effective immediately. Your role as department head is suspended pending full investigation. Security will escort you from the building." Gregory stared at them, then at Sophia, and in that moment, she saw it, not anger, not disbelief, but pure, unmasked fear. The man who had thought she was easy to erase, who believed silence meant submission, now understood who she really was. Security arrived silently. Gregory offered no resistance, lowering his eyes as they led him out. The door clicked shut behind him. Sophia's father turned to the room, voice steady but grave. "This isn't about hierarchy or family ties," he said. "It's about integrity. If someone like Sophia can spot this from where she sits, then we have a deeper problem than one bad actor." Sophia looked down at the silver pen resting beside her laptop. She didn't smile, not yet. This wasn't victory. It was the beginning of rebuilding what had been nearly destroyed. In the following days, Titan offered her a promotion, an official title, back pay, a corner office with sunlight streaming in, and ironically, a salary package nearly double what Gregory had cut. But Sophia declined, not out of ingratitude, but because she wasn't ready. She didn't want her victory to be another company optics story. She didn't want to be a symbol. She wanted to work on her own terms, quietly and fiercely. Back at her desk, things began to shift. Analysts who had avoided her now sought her input. Her name reappeared on meeting invites from which she had long been excluded. But the most surprising change was the silence. No one gossiped about Gregory anymore. He vanished as quietly as he had risen. Sophia kept her silver pen on her desk exactly where it had been all along, not as a reminder of privilege, but as a symbol of what she used it for: to record, to protect, to strike with precision. At home, she opened a new savings account dedicated to her mother's medical needs. For the first time in months, she could pay prescriptions without hesitation. But the words Gregory had spoken behind that office door lingered. "She's not protected." He wasn't wrong. For years, Sophia had worked hard to separate herself from her father's shadow. She didn't want shortcuts or whispers. She wanted to earn her place the long way. But in doing so, she had isolated herself. And that isolation was what Gregory had tried to exploit. Her turning point came with that realization. Determined not to let anyone else suffer the same fate, Sophia began mentoring two young women in the company, both brilliant, quiet, and easy to overlook. She invited them into meetings, shared praise emails, and openly discussed her failures as well as successes. Because legacy isn't about titles. It's about changing the culture. It's about raising the temperature of the room after surviving the fire. Sophia's story became a testament to the power of quiet resilience, strategic patience, and deliberate action. Not every battle needed to be loud. Sometimes, the most powerful stories are told in silence, by those who watch, listen, document, and strike only when the time is right. After the storm had passed and the boardroom doors closed behind the confrontation with Gregory Lang, Sophia Marshall felt a profound shift ripple through her world. The silence that once smothered her now felt charged with a new energy, one born not of relief, but of awakening. In the days that followed, Sophia found herself reevaluating everything, not just the betrayal and isolation she had endured, but her own beliefs about power, success, and what it truly meant to lead. For years, Sophia had measured herself by merit alone. She had prided herself on being the quiet force behind the scenes, the steady hand guiding the financial strategies that saved millions. She had rejected any notion of privilege, choosing instead to walk a narrow path of diligence and discretion, determined to earn every inch of her place in Titan Solutions. Yet, in her relentless pursuit of independence, she had unknowingly built walls around herself, walls so high and thick that even the allies she needed most couldn't reach her. She realized then that power was not just about what you do, it was about who you allow into your space. Sophia recalled the countless meetings where she had sat silently, choosing strategy over confrontation, not out of fear, but out of careful calculation. She had believed that as long as her work was impeccable, her voice wasn't necessary. But Gregory Lang's quiet campaign had shown her the brutal reality. Silence can be mistaken for weakness, and invisibility can make you vulnerable. This realization stung, but it also sparked a transformation. Sophia started to see her quietness not as a shield, but as a tool that needed to be wielded with greater awareness. She understood that strength wasn't just about endurance, but about connection, visibility, and courage to claim space. She thought of the two junior women she had recently begun mentoring, Zoe and Grace. Both brilliant, capable, but just like her, prone to staying in the shadows. She saw in them the same silent struggle she had faced, and it dawned on her, it was not enough to survive alone. True power was collective, so Sophia made a deliberate choice. She expanded her circle. She began inviting Zoe and Grace into meetings she once would have navigated solo. She shared her insights, but also her vulnerabilities, the missteps, the setbacks, the moments of doubt. It was unfamiliar territory for her, exposing parts of herself she had long kept hidden. But it was also liberating. In doing so, Sophia felt a profound sense of responsibility, not just to herself, but to those who were still finding their footing in a world that often overlooked quiet strength. She realized leadership wasn't a title or a corner office. It was the ability to lift others, to build bridges where walls once stood. Her perspective on power shifted from individual achievement to collective resilience. At work, this change rippled through her interactions. Where she had once been a lone strategist, she became a mentor and advocate. She noticed subtle shifts. Zoe's confidence grew. Grace began to speak up more in meetings, and their presence enriched the team dynamic. But it wasn't always easy. Sophia grappled with moments of doubt, wondering if she was revealing too much, risking vulnerability in a culture that rewarded toughness. She faced old fears. Would showing weakness undermine her authority? Would she be perceived as less capable? Yet each time, she pushed through, reminded by the memory of the silver pen in her blazer pocket. The pen was more than a gift, it was a symbol of self-authorship. It reminded her to write her own story, not just for herself, but for those who followed. Her father noticed the change too. One evening, during a quiet dinner, he remarked, "You've grown into a different kind of leader. One who understands that strength isn't just about standing firm alone, but knowing when to lean in and lift others." Sophia smiled, realizing how far she had come. The burden of needing to prove herself in isolation had lifted. She no longer saw herself as a lone warrior, but as part of a greater force. This shift also changed how she viewed the corporate culture around her. She became more attuned to the unspoken dynamics, the subtle exclusions, the power plays masked by politeness, the silent battles fought in boardrooms and stairwells. But instead of withdrawing, Sophia began to engage more actively. She spoke up in meetings with a newfound clarity and conviction, not to dominate, but to illuminate. She challenged processes that were unfair, advocated for transparency, and encouraged her peers to find their voices. Her quiet resilience evolved into quiet leadership, powerful, grounded, and inclusive. Sophia's story resonated beyond Titan Solutions. She began speaking at industry events, sharing her journey of silent strength and strategic patience. Her message was simple but profound. Real power isn't about noise or visibility, it's about integrity, perseverance, and lifting others as you climb. She also started a small internal network for women in finance at Titan, an informal group where they could share experiences, challenges, and advice. It became a space where voices that were once overlooked found strength and solidarity. Through this, Sophia found healing and purpose. The wounds from betrayal and isolation began to heal, replaced by a sense of belonging and impact. Her relationship with her father deepened as well. She no longer felt the need to distance herself from his legacy. Instead, she embraced it on her own terms, weaving her story into the family narrative, not as an inheritance, but as a hard-won chapter of resilience and growth. Reflecting on the journey, Sophia understood that her initial desire to separate from her father's name was not rejection but fear that she would never be seen as enough on her own. But now, she saw that true strength came from acknowledging your roots, while boldly carving your own path. Her experience had taught her the value of patience and preparation, but also the necessity of courage and connection. Sophia's perspective had shifted from survival to leadership, from quiet endurance to active empowerment. And in that shift, she found not just her voice, but her purpose. After months of navigating the stormy waters of corporate politics, Sophia Marshall began to see the horizon brighten. The battle she had waged silently was no longer just about survival, it was about transformation. For herself and for the company she had committed her life to. The week following the full committee review brought unexpected news. The executive leadership team, impressed by her meticulous audit and strategic insight, extended an official invitation for Sophia to join a newly formed task force. This team was charged with redesigning Titan Solutions' internal controls, transparency measures, and culture of accountability, a mandate born directly from the issues her report had exposed. The offer was both exhilarating and daunting. It was the opportunity she had long awaited, yet it came wrapped in layers of complexity. The very system that had tried to silence her was now asking her to help rebuild it. Sophia accepted, not out of ambition, but out of responsibility. This was her chance to turn quiet resilience into lasting change. Her first day on the task force was a whirlwind of introductions and strategy sessions. The room was filled with familiar faces, some allies, some skeptics. Among them were seasoned executives, legal advisors, and representatives from human resources. The atmosphere was cautious but hopeful. Sophia knew the stakes were high. This was more than a project. It was a test of her ability to influence a system that had once pushed her to the margins. From the outset, Sophia took a deliberate approach. She listened deeply, seeking to understand the perspectives of others while quietly asserting her own. Her experience navigating the company's hidden dynamics gave her a unique lens, a blend of data-driven insight and lived reality. One of her earliest proposals was the implementation of a transparent salary review process, aimed at eliminating the kind of unexplained pay cuts she had endured. She advocated for clear communication channels between management and staff, and for mandatory documentation of all budgetary decisions affecting personnel. Some members of the task force pushed back. Change, especially structural and cultural, is never easy. They questioned the feasibility, the costs, and even the necessity of some recommendations. But Sophia's calm confidence and thorough evidence won respect. She wasn't just speaking from theory, she spoke from the trenches. She knew the pain of exclusion and the cost of silence. Slowly, the task force's recommendations took shape. They crafted policies to protect employees from arbitrary pay cuts and unjustified demotions. They introduced mentorship programs to empower underrepresented voices and created channels for anonymous reporting of workplace concerns. For Sophia, this work was deeply personal. Each policy, each initiative, was a brick laid in the foundation of a better future, one where no one would feel invisible or powerless. Outside of work, Sophia's life began to regain balance, with her mother's medical expenses secured and a new support network forming at Titan. She found space to breathe and reflect. She dedicated time to mentoring Zoe and Grace more intentionally, watching them grow in confidence and skill. Sophia also embraced opportunities to speak publicly about her experience. At industry conferences and local business forums, she shared her story, not as a tale of victimhood, but as a blueprint for resilience and strategic action. Her message resonated widely, especially with women navigating corporate landscapes where silence is often mistaken for weakness. Sophia became a quiet beacon of hope, demonstrating that strength could be found in patience, preparation, and principled persistence. Back at Titan, the cultural shift she helped initiate was palpable. The once tense atmosphere softened as transparency increased and employees felt safer voicing concerns. Collaboration replaced suspicion, and respect began to replace fear. Yet, despite the progress, Sophia remained grounded. She knew change is a marathon, not a sprint. There were setbacks, moments of resistance, and challenges that tested her resolve. But she faced them all with the same quiet determination that had carried her through the darkest days. One afternoon, as she walked through the office, several colleagues approached her, Zoe, Grace, and a few others she had mentored. They thanked her, not just for the policy changes, but for the example she set, a model of leadership that balanced strength with empathy, courage with humility. Sophia smiled, feeling the weight of their words. She realized that her story was no longer hers alone. It was woven into the lives of others, those she had lifted and those who would come after. The silver pen, once a simple gift, had become a symbol of this legacy, not of privilege, but of perseverance and purpose. Sophia's journey from isolation to influence taught her that opportunity often comes disguised as challenge. That the moments when you feel most vulnerable can also be the ones that prepare you for your greatest impact. She had learned that real power is not just about the positions you hold, but the lives you touch. As the sun set over Seattle, Sophia sat at her desk, pen in hand, ready to write the next chapter, not just for herself, but for everyone who believed that quiet strength could change the world. Sophia Marshall's journey was no longer just about reclaiming her rightful place at Titan Solutions. It had become a profound transformation of who she was, both as a professional and as a person. The challenges she had faced, the betrayal, the isolation, the silent battles, had forged a new resilience, one that was no longer just survival, but intentional growth. In the months that followed her appointment to the executive task force, Sophia found herself stepping into a new version of leadership, one that demanded vulnerability as much as strength, and patience as much as decisiveness. She learned that true growth wasn't linear. It came with setbacks, self-doubt, and moments of loneliness, but it also brought clarity, confidence, and a deeper connection to her purpose. Sophia's mornings began differently now. Instead of rushing through emails and reports, she carved out time for reflection, a ritual of grounding herself before the day's demands. She journaled her thoughts, celebrated small wins, and acknowledged the fears that still lingered beneath the surface. This practice, simple yet powerful, allowed her to stay centered amid the chaos of corporate life. At work, her growth manifested in subtle but impactful ways. She became more intentional in her communication, choosing words that inspired collaboration rather than command. She listened more deeply, recognizing that leadership was as much about hearing others' stories as telling her own. Sophia also embraced the imperfections in herself and others, realizing that expecting perfection only created barriers. She started sharing her own challenges openly, creating a space where vulnerability was met with empathy, not judgment. Her relationship with Zoe and Grace deepened into a mentorship rooted in trust and mutual growth. She encouraged them to take risks, speak up, and own their narratives. Watching them flourish ignited a sense of fulfillment Sophia hadn't known she was missing. Sophia's growth extended beyond the office walls. She reconnected with her father, not as a daughter seeking approval, but as a partner in leadership. Their conversations evolved from cautious exchanges to candid dialogues about legacy, values, and vision. This renewed bond grounded Sophia, reminding her that strength could coexist with connection. Sophia also invested in self-care in ways she had long neglected. Therapy sessions that had once felt like a luxury became essential. She learned to recognize burnout's early signs and took proactive steps to maintain balance. She discovered joy in simple pleasures, a morning walk along the Puget Sound, quiet evenings reading, laughter-filled dinners with friends. Through it all, Sophia never lost sight of the lessons learned in the stairwell on the 17th floor, the lesson that silence, when wielded with purpose, could become a powerful form of resistance. Her growth was evident to those around her. Colleagues noticed a new warmth in her presence, a quiet confidence that didn't demand attention but naturally drew it. Executives sought her counsel not just for her financial acumen, but for her wisdom and integrity. Yet, Sophia remained humble. She knew that growth was ongoing, a journey without a final destination. She embraced challenges as opportunities to learn, failures as catalysts for innovation, and feedback as gifts for improvement. One defining moment came during a company-wide town hall, where Sophia was invited to speak about the recent cultural shifts at Titan Solutions. Standing before a sea of faces, some skeptical, some hopeful, she shared her story with honesty and grace. She spoke not just of obstacles overcome, but of the collective effort required to build a workplace where everyone could thrive. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring conversations long after the event ended. Sophia's growth was not without sacrifice. There were days when the weight of expectations felt overwhelming, when old doubts crept back like shadows. But she met each challenge with the same quiet determination that had sustained her through the darkest days. She learned to celebrate progress, not perfection, and to find strength in community rather than solitude. As the months turned into a year, Sophia reflected on how far she had come. From the moment her salary was slashed without warning, through the silent battles and the eventual triumph, she had transformed, not just in title or status, but in spirit. Sophia Marshall had become a leader defined not by loud proclamations, but by steady courage, unwavering integrity, and a commitment to lifting others as she rose. Her silver pen, once a simple gift, now symbolized a legacy of resilience and empowerment. She held it not as a token of privilege, but as a reminder of the story she was writing every day, one of strength, grace, and profound growth. Sophia Marshall's story wasn't just a tale of corporate intrigue or personal triumph. it was a testament to the quiet power of resilience, integrity, and unwavering commitment to one's truth. As she sat at her desk in the same modest workspace she had refused to leave, the soft glow of her silver pen gleamed beside her laptop, a symbol of the journey that had shaped her into the leader she had become. Months had passed since Gregory Lang's fall from grace, yet the ripples of Sophia's courage continued to expand across Titan Solutions. The company was evolving, not just in policy but in spirit. The once opaque corridors now echoed with conversations about transparency, fairness, and empowerment. Employees found their voices, and leaders, inspired by Sophia's example, began to prioritize values over appearances. But Sophia's triumph was not born from vengeance or anger. It was forged in clarity and calm purpose, the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Reflecting on her journey, Sophia understood that her greatest victories had come not from fighting louder, but from watching, listening, and striking with precision. It was a dance of patience and courage, one that required knowing when to speak and when to wait. Her story resonated far beyond the walls of Titan Solutions. Invitations to speak at industry conferences and leadership forums poured in. Sophia shared her message with humility and power, that true leadership often blooms in silence, that the most formidable strength lies in strategic resilience, and that every voice, no matter how quiet, deserves to be heard. She became a mentor to countless women navigating similar battles, a beacon of hope in workplaces where silence was often mistaken for weakness. Sophia's story reminded them that invisibility is not insignificance, and that perseverance, paired with preparation, could turn the tide. At Titan, Sophia continued to lead by example. She championed initiatives that fostered inclusivity and accountability. But she also understood the importance of balance, knowing when to push forward and when to nurture the roots. Her mentorship programs flourished, cultivating a new generation of leaders who carried forward her legacy of strength tempered with empathy. Sophia's father watched her with pride, not because of titles or accolades, but because of the integrity and grace she embodied. Their relationship had evolved into a partnership of equals, each respecting the other's journey and vision. Yet, even as Sophia embraced her role as a leader and advocate, she remained deeply grounded. She knew the road ahead would bring challenges and setbacks, but she faced them with the quiet confidence that comes from having weathered the storm and emerged not just intact, but transformed. One afternoon, as she walked through the halls of Titan Solutions, a young analyst approached her nervously. "Thank you," the woman said softly. "Your story gave me the courage to speak up, to know that I'm not alone." Sophia smiled warmly, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're never alone," she replied, "and your voice matters." It was moments like these, small, intimate connections, that Sophia treasured most. They were reminders that her journey was about more than personal victory. It was about creating a ripple effect of empowerment. Her silver pen rested on her desk, a constant reminder of the promise she made years ago, to write her own story, to protect it fiercely, and to help others write theirs. Sophia's story was far from over. It was a living narrative of resilience, leadership, and hope, a story that would inspire others to find their strength in silence, to prepare in quiet, and to strike with undeniable power when the time was right. And for anyone who had ever felt overlooked, silenced, or undervalued, Sophia's journey stood as a beacon, that you are more powerful than you know. And that sometimes, the greatest victories are won not with noise, but with unwavering grace and determination. Sophia Marshall's journey teaches us that silence is not synonymous with weakness. In a world that often values loud voices and immediate reactions, her story reminds us that true strength often lives in quiet resilience, strategic patience, and unwavering integrity. It's about watching closely, listening deeply, and choosing the right moment to act with precision. When you face injustice or feel overlooked, it's natural to want to fight loudly or walk away. But sometimes, survival requires a different kind of courage, the courage to remain calm, gather evidence, build your case, and prepare for a decisive strike that cannot be ignored. Sophia's experience also highlights the importance of connection. Isolation can make us vulnerable, but when we open ourselves to mentorship, collaboration, and community, we build networks of support that amplify our power and protect us from being sidelined. The greatest leadership isn't about titles or visibility, it's about the legacy you create through your actions, the lives you impact, and the strength you cultivate within and share with others. If you ever find yourself in a workplace where you feel silenced or undervalued, start by documenting your work and any inconsistencies you notice. Keep detailed records, emails, and data that support your contributions. This not only protects you but also prepares you for meaningful conversations or formal reviews. Seek out mentors and allies. Even if it means stepping out of your comfort zone, building a support network can provide guidance, encouragement, and advocacy. Practice strategic patience. Assess the situation calmly before reacting. Sometimes, waiting for the right moment to present your case with clarity and evidence can have a far greater impact than immediate confrontation. Finally, invest in your well-being. Resilience requires strength, and strength is fueled by balance, self-care, and connection. Remember, your voice matters, and with preparation and perseverance, you can turn silence into your greatest power. Thank you for choosing to listen to this story among thousands of stories out there. Like and subscribe to continue listening to the latest stories.